last seminar for now of my summer series. If there is an interest, I will probably do one closer to back to school time. I have a friend who's a nurse practitioner who is a school nurse in Philadelphia district, and I may actually have her come on with me to talk to us about the latest up-to-date information on going back to school in the midst of COVID. So we may be doing that one, so be on the lookout for that. But we have talked about COVID. We have, today I wanted to talk a little bit, not about COVID and something else, because we are hitting summer. And I want to talk about safety in the summer, because our minds are on COVID, our minds are on some of the more recent things happening in our city, in our country, with, you know, the protests and other things. And I'm not sure how much we are thinking about having a safe summer. And I hope you're not planning on just being indoors, locked up in your house all summer just because of COVID. I want you guys to spend time outdoors and do things in a safe way. So I thought it would be fun to talk about summer safety. In the pediatrics world, in the world where the doctors who take care of children, June starts what we call our trauma months, meaning between June, July, and August, our summer months, we see the most traumas out of the whole year. It's called trauma season in our ERs. And so I thought I would want to talk about this with you guys. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So summer safety, having a safe summer in the midst of COVID. Let's get started. The first topic I want to talk about is something I call sun safety. And you can see there's a picture of a sunscreen bottle there. And sun safety is so important. I'm going to ask you guys to do a little game with me. We're going to play a game of true and false. And you can answer. I'll give you a minute to answer in the chat box to see what you think the right answer is. So let's see. So sunscreen that's SPF of 100 is better than SPF of 30. Is this true or false? I don't know how I'm going to be able to see your chat. Let me stop the screen share for a second, see if I can see it. Somebody said true. I don't see any other answers. Okay, so somebody says false. Somebody says false. Okay, most of you think it's false. The answer is false. SPF 100 is not better than SPF 30. So those numbers have to do with how many times more that you are protected from the sun. So you would think 100 times is better than 30, but we have found after an SPF of 15 or maybe 30, doing higher numbers does not protect you anymore from the sun. And in fact, there's two bad things about using things like SPF 50 and 100. One thing is that it gives people a false sense of security. You think you're more protected when you're not. So people don't apply their sunscreen as often and they get more sunburns. The second thing is to make it an SPF of 50, sometimes, or 100, they put in more chemicals and more ingredients, and it can clog pores and cause rashes. And all you are doing is getting more chemical and not necessarily getting more sun protection. So that was a good one. I was trying to trick you there. How about you have to reapply sunscreen every 2 hours? Is this true or false? And again, I'm going to stop my screen share just to see some of your answers. Do you have to reapply sunscreen every 2 hours? That sounds like a lot. Okay. So we have a bunch of true and just a few false. The answer is that it's true. You have to reapply every 2 hours. And if you're having fun in the sun, 2 hours goes by very quickly. So you have to set an alarm or set a reminder or listen to your parents when they say, hey, you have to put it on again, especially if you're swimming, especially if you're sweating a lot. You have to reapply every 2 to 3 hours. How about you don't need sunscreen if it's cloudy? So if the sun's not out, then you don't need sunscreen. Is this true or false? Good. So I have a bunch of people saying it's false, and you're right. Even when it's very cloudy outside, the UVA and UVB rays still penetrate through the clouds. And so you may not feel as hot, or it may not seem like you need it, but you need sunscreen just the same. How about sunscreen is not safe for babies? Babies can't have sunscreen. What do you guys think about this one? I'm seeing a lot of false there. Okay, well, this one was kind of a trick question because it's true that babies can have sunscreen, but babies under 6 months, it's not safe. So I should have probably put true and false. This was a trick question. So babies under 6 months can't have sunscreen because of the chemicals in there and their absorption through their skin is thinner. And so for babies under 6 months, we recommend tightly woven long sleeve clothing, staying out of the sun and staying in the shade, using things like hats and baby sunglasses. For little exposed little areas like the tip of their nose or their hands and things like that, you can't put on a small amount, but practically speaking, babies suck on their hands and they rub their eyes and all these things. So we generally say no sunscreen until the baby is over 6 months. How about you should avoid the sun midday? Is this true or false? You have a couple of answers that say true. It's true. The midday sun is the hottest, and it's where you can get the most sunburn and sun damage. And so you really should avoid being out in the sun between about 11 to 3, which is the heat of the day. You want to avoid being in the sun. Now, you guys did really good on this quiz. And you're probably wondering, well, why is sun safety so important? Why did I ask you and tell you all these facts about sun safety? Well, it's because if you use sunscreen and you have less sun exposure, you don't get skin cancer. Skin cancer is the reason why, or one of the biggest reasons why we tell you that you need to wear sunscreen in the summer. And this lady looks a little scary, but she really likes the sun. She thinks she's looking pretty good in a tan. But I will let you know that when our skin tans, it's actually our body's way of trying to heal from UV radiation from the sun. And it turns out 1 in 5 Americans, people who live in America, will develop skin cancer by the age of 70. So that's 20%. So every 5 people over 70, if you pick one of them, they will have had or will have skin cancer. And they did a study and they found that people who have sunburns, not just a sunburn, but you have a burn enough to get a blister, even one blistering sunburn in that area increases your risk for getting cancer, skin cancer in that area. So at all costs, even if you get a little red, you do not want to have a blistering sunburn. Women who have had 5 blistering sunburns, not in the same place, but just 5 in general in different parts of their body, they had an 80% higher chance of skin cancer. And for my older girls and my teenagers, if you use tanning lamps or tanning beds, it doesn't help. It's just as bad as getting UV radiation from the sun. And so I wanted to take a moment and talk a little bit about chemical versus mineral sunscreens. I don't know if this is confusing for anyone, but I will explain. So there's 2 basic types of sunscreens. There's a chemical one, and you'll see things in there such as oxybenzene and a lot of these chemical names that end in -ene. Those are very good, and people like them because it gets absorbed into your skin and it goes in deep, and it actually from inside it causes a chemical reaction that actually dissipates and fights off the sun rays. The mineral sunscreens, which we like because they're more like organic and safer and they're not chemicals, they tend to be like, if you've seen people and you get that white film on their skin and you can't get rid of it, that person's used mineral-based sunscreen. Those sunscreens do not go into your skin. It stays on the surface of your skin and forms a block and a barrier to the sun's light. So there's benefits to one or the other. And it just depends on how much safer you are. If you're gonna be in a hot sun, like on the beach for hours, and you're not using it often, I will use the chemical sunscreen on my kids because it absorbs better, it lasts longer, it's safer. But if we're just going out for a walk in the park, I'm gonna put the mineral sunscreen on. And there are some really good sunscreens out there that are a good combination of both. One of the ones that I love is called Blue Lizard. It's SPF 30 and it has oxybenzene and zinc oxide, and it's the best of both worlds. So that's my little spiel about sunscreen and sun safety. So the next thing I want to talk about in the summer that we see a lot of is water safety. Because in the summer we are swimming, we're on the water a lot versus cold weather. So there's a lot of issues with kids getting drowning or having accidents in and around water. And I'm not sure if all of us are aware how important this topic is. So I want to talk to you about it a little bit. Water safety. I'm going to have you in this one. You can guess between two answers, which one is right. Okay, so here's my statement. Drowning is the first or it's the third leading cause of unintentional death, meaning you didn't mean to get hurt or die, but they drowned and unfortunately they died, these children between 5 and 14 years old. Is it the first leading cause or the third leading cause of unintentional death? I won't go back and forth for the sake of time, but I'll tell you, it's the third leading cause of unintentional death in children 5 to 14 years old. So it is one of the leading causes of death. It's not something that happens once in a blue moon. How about this one? Drowning is the first or the third leading cause of injury-related death in children under 4. So this is now little kids, like 4 and under, toddlers and babies. Drowning is the first or the third leading cause of injury-related death in children under 4. You guys might have a guess. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna flip back and forth, but you can guess and still write it in the chat and see if you're right. It's actually the first. Drowning is the leading cause killer of injury-related death in children under 4. So if you've got children who are younger, this is something really important to be aware of. And it's because young children, like toddlers, can drown in less than 2 inches of water or 6 inches of water. Which one do you think it is? If you want to answer, you can unmute and answer too. If you want to answer in person, that's fine. Young children can drown in less than 2 inches of water. Do you know what 2 inches of water looks like? It looks like about that much. That's how deep water has to be for a little toddler to drown. And I'm going to ask you guys to unmute and tell me, what are some areas that young children, things that you just find around the house, where there's at least 2 inches of water, where little toddlers might get into trouble and be at a risk for drowning? Can you guys think of anything? Where's there water around our house that's at least 2 inches deep? Some common places. I gave you a hint in this one, right here.
Yeah, bucket.
Say again?
Cup, like you're taking a shower.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, yeah. So a bathtub is actually a common place where young kids and babies drown or suffer harm from water. I drew a picture here, a swimming pool, your own pool in your backyard. And for little toddlers, for 2 inches of water, even buckets and pails of water that are left out. And you think, how does that happen? But kids who are learning to walk, like toddlers, like 1.5-year-olds, their balance is a little off and they have much bigger heads compared to the size of their body. And so they're a little bit clumsy and they'll fall head first, you know, bending down or looking in, and then they can't get up or their head gets stuck. Even that, something as simple as that can cause drowning. So less than 2 inches of water. And this statistic also kind of surprised me a little bit for the parents. What do you think? Is it 25% or 90% of drownings occur with at least one parent present? If they're with their parents, is it 25% of drownings or 90% of drownings occur with at least one parent present?
I think it's 25%.
Good guess. Thank you for guessing. Who was that? Was that Sarah? I can't tell because my screen is not on you guys.
It was me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good guess because, you know, parents are really good at keeping an eye on their kids and they love their kids and they don't want them to drown. But unfortunately, 88% or almost 90% of drownings happen with at least one parent present. And so this leads me to talk a little bit about how do we stay safe around water. And the first thing is not just supervision or being in a vicinity, but engage supervision. You've got to be, especially for the younger ones, about an arm's length reach within the kids, because even being close by doesn't necessarily reduce your risk. It's got to be actively engaged supervision. Oh, what happened to my, I don't know what's happening there, guys. It's having a mind of its own. Something's happening to my slide. I'm not sure what happened. Sorry about that. So engage supervision. And then the second thing I need my kids to know is never swim alone. You should never be in a pool or near water by yourself. You should always have a buddy, because if something happens, you have someone to help you or somebody to, I am not sure what's happening. I am not even touching my screen. Somebody to help you or somebody to go get help. So you never want to swim alone. And ideally, you want to be with somebody who's also a good swimmer. Swimming lessons have been shown to reduce drownings. How many of you know how to swim? So if you are over 1 year old and you haven't started swimming lessons, I'm gonna recommend, now this summer might be a little bit different because our pools and things are not as open because of COVID, but when you can and you get a chance and it's safe to, I really want everybody to take swim lessons because it saves lives from drowning. Training for parents and caregivers to do CPR. Even minutes make a difference. The fact that somebody can start CPR while you're waiting for someone make the difference between being brain dead or not. And so CPR, it's good for everybody to know. And one of the greatest things that impact that it makes on safety around water is when you put a fence around a pool. So if you have a pool in your backyard or you go to a pool, there has to be fencing around it, at least 4 feet tall. And these were some of the things that really showed to be effective. The fencing had to be 4 feet tall. It has to latch by itself when it swings closed. The opening is, the door is facing outwards, and also using alarms. This really reduces the risk. In fact, one study found that if you have a 4-sided gate or a fence around a swimming pool, it reduced drowning by 87% when you just compare it to any old fence, like a property fence. So this is really, really helpful. So if you have a pool, you really want to, it's not, in the state of Pennsylvania, it's not mandated, but this is something that we've just shown that it really does reduce your risk. Is there any questions so far about water safety or sun safety? You can put it in a chat or unmute yourself. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to keep going then. So next thing I want to talk about in the summer is what I call bites and bugs. How many know that you get lots of mosquito bites in the summer, right? So we're going to play a little game here, and I have put in a whole bunch of possible answers, and we're going to do a little bit of fill in the blank. Okay, let's see if you guys can get any of these answers. These kind of bites can transmit diseases like West Nile virus or Zika virus. Can you find a word on the bottom of the screen that would fit that? What kind of bites will transmit the virus, West Nile virus and things like that? I'm gonna look in the chat. Yeah, a lot of you got it. You guys said mosquito bites, and it's absolutely true. So mosquito bites we don't think of as being too dangerous, right? But mosquito bites do. They can transmit some of these viruses that cause infection in your brain called encephalitis. And so we want to protect ourselves, not just so we're not, itchy all night, but because it can really protect us from some serious illnesses. How about the second one? Tick bites can cause this disease. If it helps, I will cross out the ones that we've used. So tick bites can cause this kind of disease. And a few people said Lyme disease, and that's true, that's correct. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about Lyme disease on its own after we get through some of this information. How about this one? Wearing these kinds of sleeves and these kinds of pants can prevent bug bites. Short or long sleeves? I'll give you this one. It's kind of common sense. Wearing long sleeves and long pants will actually prevent you from getting bug bites because it forms a barrier. And what kind of colored clothing do bugs like? Do they like bright colored clothing or do they like dark colored clothing? Yeah, that's right. Bugs like really bright colored clothing. So you don't want to wear that when you're out, especially at night when you're going on hikes or walks and things like that in the summer. And how about the last one? Repellents containing this are effective for preventing bug bites. This is a really important chemical that helps us. So yeah, repellents containing DEET. Oops, sorry, gotta go back. Repellents containing DEET, it's a special chemical name that are effective for preventing bug bites. And not only does it protect against mosquitoes, but it protects against tick bites as well. And you need somewhere between 10 to 30% DEET for it to be really effective. And studies kind of show 30% is not necessarily better than 10. So if you can find one with at least 10, that's safe. I would say if you're, they have like all different kinds. And so again, with the sunscreen, it depends on what activity you're going to be doing, what you might choose to use. If you're going to go organic like citronella, or you're going to do the real DEET. Now, one thing I want to tell the parents is that, believe it or not, DEET is actually safe and recommended by the Academy of Pediatrics for 2 months and older. So it's actually safe to put it on. However, it's something that you want to take off. So you don't want to put it on and then you don't want to sleep in it. You want to make sure you take a shower and wash with soap and water when you're done before you go to bed or when you're done with your outdoor activity. So I'm talking about this picture here because I don't know about you guys or if this happens to any of you, but my family, when they get a mosquito bite, like their whole arm or their whole leg blows up, like this poor child who got bit on his calves or her calves. It's not just a bite, but it will often turn very red, very hot, very swollen, very itchy, and the skin almost turns like firm underneath it. And it also can get like a little mucin, like a little bit of a blister filled with fluid that's kind of yellowish or white, and people think that it's infected. Can I just ask, you can unmute and answer, does this happen to any of you? Does anybody get that? Okay, I see one hand over there. Some people are not on, but
Happens to
yeah, it does. It happens more often than we think. And people say, I'm really allergic to mosquitoes. And everyone's like, everyone's allergic to mosquitoes. Everybody gets red and itchy. But this is actually a medical localized allergic reaction called papular urticaria. And it's a special type of local reaction to certain types of mosquito bites. And it is called urticaria because it's a special type of hive. And, you know, it's very uncomfortable for people who get it. I mean, it's not just a regular mosquito bite for them. And so if you get a mosquito bite, or especially if you get this papular urticaria and you're uncomfortable, I'll tell you some of the quickest, safest ways to do at-home treatment. The first thing you should do if you get a bite like this is I would put ice on it. Ice makes your blood vessels shrink, so the poison from the mosquito bite doesn't spread everywhere and get bigger. It causes what we call vasoconstriction and makes your blood vessels contract so it doesn't spread. It also kills the itch right away because as you scratch it, your skin releases histamine, which also makes it blow up more. So you put ice on it right away and it helps the inflammation. Then you have to take Benadryl by mouth. So if you take an oral Benadryl, you're gonna hit it from the inside out. If you don't have Benadryl, take an allergy medicine like Zyrtec. Unfortunately, non-drowsy allergy meds like Claritin and Allegra, they won't help you. But Benadryl is the best, and then Zyrtec. Take it right away after the bite, and that will help calm the whole allergic reaction process. And then you can easily find some hydrocortisone cream over the counter, and you can put it on about 3 times a day for up to a week, and that will help this thing from really blowing up. But of course, prevention and not getting bit in the first place by using DEET and some of these bug sprays is the best way to actually prevent it. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about Lyme disease, because where we live, Lyme disease is actually relatively common. Lyme disease you get from a bite of a tick, and the tick, when it bites you, it releases or transfers a bacteria into your body that causes the Lyme disease. And this disease, sometimes people think it's controversial, but basically I just summarized it easily for you kids to see. There's early signs of this thing and there's late signs of Lyme disease when you get a bite. The early signs, even though this one says 3 to 30 days after the bite, it's more like days to weeks. I would say it happens between 1 week to 3 weeks on average after you get the tick bite. You'll get fever, chills, headache. You might feel unusually tired. Basically, you feel like you have the flu is what it is. And it's very general and nothing specific. But then later signs, such as weeks later to even months later, you can get something called Bell's palsy, which is one side of your face, the nerve doesn't work, so it will droop. So you can't, when you smile, like one side will be up and one side will be down, and that's called facial palsy. You can also develop arrhythmias, or what we call heartbeats that are irregular. You'll get dizzy and you can continue to get headaches. And then what we classically think of is this rash that looks like a bullseye. And this can come up weeks after. One thing that's not on here that's very common to pediatrics is a swollen, boggy knee or a hip. A large joint gets swollen. And that's another sign of Lyme disease. So I get in the summertime as a pediatrician calls all the time about tick bites. And I'm not sure how many of us are familiar with how ticks look. So I decided to put this picture up here just to give you an idea, okay? There's many different kinds of ticks, but the tick that causes the Lyme disease is this one on top called the black-legged tick. Ixodes scapularis. That's the name of it. And this is the tick that we find in northeastern US, that where we live, that really transmits Lyme disease, and they're often found on deers. It's a deer tick, excuse me. There's other ticks like the Lone Star tick, and this is a dog tick. You can see these are much, much bigger. And so if you see one that's really big, it's probably not going to be the tick that does Lyme disease. If you can look on this finger, see these 4 different sizes of ticks over here on the picture? And see right here, this dime, a picture of a dime in the corner? That is how small it is compared to the size of a dime. It's really, really hard to see. And the stage of the tick that actually really is contagious for Lyme is this little 2 here, the nymph. This is the stage where it really transmits it a lot. It's more rare for the bigger adults, the adult females, to transmit it. And if you look here, here's a tick that looks engorged. So that means it's actually been feeding on the blood of somebody, and its body will blow up like that. But normally you can see on this finger how tiny it is. And looking at these pictures, again, it's a comparison. You'll get a feeling for how small these little ticks are. So in the Northeast, we have a lot of Lyme disease. You know, when you're outside walking in the parks and stuff, you see a lot of deer, right? Anywhere between 1 to 50% of ticks in an area can have Lyme bacteria that cause the infection. But in the Northeast where we live, in some parts it's closer to that 40 to 50%. So it is somewhat common up here. A tick has to be stuck on you for at least 1.5 to 2 days to pass on the infection of Lyme disease. That's why it's so important, if you've been playing outside, especially near grassy or wooded areas, you want to really do a thorough tick check. If you do, you'll catch it on day 1 and you'll really decrease your chance of getting Lyme disease. But if you don't check and you find it later and you're like, when did this come on? If it's been over 2 days, it has a much higher chance of transmitting the disease. Now, there's a lot of myths about Lyme disease, and I will tell you that here in the state of Pennsylvania, we don't send it to the lab to test it anymore. So I know people come in having put the tick in like a paper plastic bag or something and wanting to give it to us to send to the lab. Those tests, it will not be run. And also, it's not recommended just to do a blood test or a screening blood test if you found a tick. Again, the transmission rate is low enough that it's not necessary, and also because there's a lot of false positives on some of these blood tests for Lyme disease. And also, it's not recommended to treat prophylactically, which means we just give you an antibiotic to treat for Lyme just in case, because you have to take antibiotics for at least 2 to 3 weeks just to treat prophylactically, and that can wipe out a lot of good bacteria in your body and have lots of other side effects, such as resistant to antibiotics. So we don't recommend we do that for Lyme anymore. Oh, let me go back. Anybody have any questions about bites, mosquito bites, tick bites? Anyone?
Does the mosquito bites only grow when you scratch them?
So that is such a good question. So let me put it this way. When you scratch, you know, whether there's a bite there or not, have you noticed some of you, if you scratch it, you'll see like a pink line and your skin there gets red or swollen? Those people, it's because your body releases histamine, and it's something that your body releases when you get, when your skin gets like irritated or injured. So if you get a bite and you scratch it, it will release more of this thing called histamine in your skin that makes it swell and get bigger. So scratching does make it worse. Now, if you don't scratch at all, does it mean it won't itch at all? No, that's not true either. But it will itch a lot less, and it will probably swell a lot less. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna move on. Thanks for the questions. I love it when it's interactive. So injuries and falls. This is my last topic. I told you that the summer months are trauma months, trauma season for pediatricians in the ER. There's over 200,000 children that go to the ER for an injury during these months. And there's so many different ways that you can get injured in the summer. I'm not gonna go through all of them, but I just wanted to highlight one that kids particularly love. And it's this trampoline right here. And there's two things wrong with this trampoline. It doesn't have an enclosure. So if you're gonna use a trampoline, it really should have one of those tall, it should be enclosed in so you can't fall out and land on the ground and break something or sprain something. And also the thing that they're doing wrong is there's 4 kids jumping on this trampoline all at once. The rule of thumb is 1 person jumping at one time. If you've ever seen kids jump together and they lose their balance, this is where you not just get sprains, but it can lead to fractures. I've seen tons of concussions from kids jumping together and banging their head and falling out and then hitting their head on the ground. And it kind of seems fun, but when you've really been seriously injured, the potential for neck injuries, cervical neck injuries to your spine, which can lead to things like, becoming paralyzed. This is a big deal. So you really want to be safe when you are jumping on trampolines. So again, you want to use a trampoline that has an enclosure and only 1 person jump at a time. The last thing I want to talk about is bicycle safety and falls from bikes. Last year, 600 kids died from a bike accident. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but if I put it in the context of, let's say, coronavirus, it's hundreds more kids dying from a bike accident than from getting seriously ill from COVID-19. And people who died from a bike accident were 3 times as likely not to have been wearing a helmet, which is a statistically significant deal. So this is why, kids, we tell you, you gotta wear your helmet. It actually prevents serious injury and death from an accident on your bicycle. In fact, one study found that up to 88% of serious head and face injuries were prevented by wearing just a simple bike helmet. That's an almost 90% reduction. And they were looking at not simple things. They were looking at serious head injuries like comas, brain damage, brain bleeds, concussions, and facial injuries such as broken bones like your jawbone or your cheekbones, or it really prevented serious injuries from wearing a helmet. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about a couple of safety rules when you're riding your bikes this summer. The first thing is all bike rides need a helmet. It is a big myth that you're like, oh, I'm only in the driveway, or oh, I'm only gonna take a short ride. All bike rides need a helmet. This is so important. It might just save your life. All ages need a helmet. So parents, if you're biking with your children, you have to wear a helmet too. This study of 65 to 88% reduction didn't look at only adults or only children. They looked at all ages across the board. And you can be a good example by wearing one. Always ride on the right side of traffic. So I know some people have been taught, let me face opposing traffic so they can see me better, but that is a myth. It's safer to ride on the right side of traffic. You always want to be on the right side of the car. And learn to use hand signals. In pediatrics, this was another myth that kids, if they're trying to signal, they're gonna lose their balance and fall. But probably a fall from losing their balance is gonna be a lot safer than getting into a motor vehicle accident. And it shows that using hand signals works. So I don't know if you guys know your hand signals for bike safety. I'm sure you might have learned it at school or at health or something. And you can't see this guy's hand, it's cut off. But a left turn would be straight out. A right turn would be like an L, your arm up. A stop would be your arm down. And then if you were slowing down, you want to just kind of wave your hand down, low like this on the slide. So remember your hand signals, learn them, and use them if you're especially if you're, you know, riding not on just a single bike path or something like that. And just avoid riding in dark or dangerous conditions. You know, just because you have something on your bike to make it shine or things like that, it's just common sense, but don't do it in bad weather. Don't do it under dangerous conditions, and you can have a really safe bike ride. So that's pretty much it for the end of that's my presentation. Thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for playing along. I see all these great answers over here. And I hope you guys have a great night and stay safe and have a great summer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, Jungwoo, is Sunny's presentation is the next week or week after next?
Next week.
Next
I thought
week.
it was the next week.
Okay. Oh, it's next week. So tune in at the same time on Wednesday night at 7, guys. She probably has a different meeting ID, but tune in. It's going to be a good one. She's amazing. And my patients love her. So
Next week. Bye.
good night. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye. You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.